In this video, you will learn how to use Semarchy's xDM, a Snowflake Native App, to generate data management applications that are crucial for preparing AI-ready data and data for analytics. If you'd like to learn more about Semarchy's xDM, you can visit the resource section of our website, where you can obtain a trial license of xDM and follow the many easy-to-use tutorials. Before diving into the demo, I want to quickly define what master data management is. Next, we'll look at the architecture of the Semarchy Native App. And to help us understand what gets generated, I'll present an example of an MDM application. Most of our time will be spent in the developer tools, so you can understand how to configure Semarchy xDM to create applications and dashboards. Master data management is about managing some of the most important data in your organization. This data is typically described by using nouns such as customer or product, but it can also be suppliers, vendors, securities, store locations, oil wells, even reference data such as cost centers or country codes. Master data management has the ability to consolidate data from multiple sources, enrich that data through the use of AI. It has a validation engine to ensure the data is high quality, and governance to manage collaboration and approvals of changes. Dashboards can also be used to give insight into your master data. The native app runs in two containers. The first is the application server that executes the software, and the second is a database to store the repository information. Data enters the app from the left via real-time REST messaging or SQL landing tables. It's then processed in the data certification process to produce unique golden records that pass validation tests. This data can be stored in a Snowflake warehouse as golden records, ready to be used by AI, ML, and analytics. The tools in the native app are all available via the web browser. Tools such as Application Builder, Workflow Builder, dashboards, data profiling, etc. Let's take a look at what gets generated. This is the welcome page to the product. It's divided into two sections. Along the top are generated applications. These are samples of what's possible. And along the bottom are the tools the developers use to do things like do discovery on profiling, build a dashboard, build a workflow, build an application. Let's start with the application that was generated. This is a typical example where you'll have the ability to do something like a rule search. The application uses Google Material Design, so it's easy to understand and easy to use. You can look at things like a list of companies and then open a particular company, see information about that company. You can have the information in columns and tabs. Here, the address was run through a third-party address validation service. It can be multi-domains where contacts are related to customers. But where it gets interesting is when the data comes in from the source systems. We call that master data. Here you can see several records came in that were merged into this one company. 3 of them came from the CRM, 1 from the ERP, 1 from finance, and 1 from support. The blue values are the surviving values that made it onto the golden record. If you want to learn more about their relationships, you can look at it in a graph view. Here are all the records that were used to make the golden record. If I want to know why they're related, I can click on the relationships to understand that this relationship had a 98% score because it had the exact same name and enriched address, whereas this relationship had an 88% score because the phonetic name matched. If I want to make corrections, I could say that this finance record is actually a different record, so I'm going to create a new golden record from it. And maybe this record from the ERP is also the same as that record. Now you can see I have 2 golden records, one from the ERP and financial systems, and the CRMs and support make up the old golden record. We remember these relationships so that in the future, when these source systems send us data, we make sure they go to the correct golden records. And the reverse is true. If we want to combine golden records and merge them together, we can simply drag them together. And now all of these source system records are merged into the single golden record. You can also use dashboards to understand what's going on in your system. Here's an example of data quality for products. There are KPIs, violation heat maps, pie charts, and here's a violation list of products that failed material validation. I can look at those products by drilling in and seeing what they are, and I can open an individual product as well. In this product, I can see that there are missing materials, missing main image, and there's women's shoes with no heel height or shoe with no closure tag. These need to be completed before it can move from drafts to golden data. And a lot of times that's done through a workflow. If I go to my inbox, I can see my team is working on a lot of things. In the approval process are a few different things. For instance, this one product, I'm going to start the approval process. The approval process will show us where in the workflow we are. So we can see the product came in by being created or edited. It took a fork, whether it's critical or non-critical, went through marketing and supply chain, and finally came to our current step, the approval step. I can walk through the different screens to understand all the aspects of this product. In the end, I have a chance to approve it and submit it as golden data or send it back and ask for the fix. So let's take a look at the developer tools and how this application was created. Let's start with the dashboard builder. This is where we would create a dashboard like I showed in the demonstration. If we look at the product data quality dashboard, you can see it's going to start with a series of queries where we ask for data for the dashboard. Then we're going to create charts where we look at what format the chart should be in, what query it should be used, and how it should be divided. Once we create our charts, we're going to put them into dashboards where we can just hit the plus button to add a chart and then move them around the order which we want to display them in the dashboard. And then we can do a preview of the dashboard to see what our changes look like. There's also the workflow builder. So in the workflow builder, we're going to configure workflows so that collaboration can happen with approval steps. For instance, here is a workflow that I showed earlier to create or edit a new product. And it's all drag and drop, how I can create different paths through different tasks. If I wanted to create a new task, I could simply hit the plus button, say, what type of task is it? Let's say that it is a user task, and I'll call it add translation. Once I create it, I can place it anywhere in the chart I want, and I can create any paths to it. For instance, if the new product's being created and I want to add translations in the process, I can add a new transition and call this translations transition. And in the transition, I can say the next step would be to add translations. And now you can see a path has been created from this task to the next task, and a new button was created on the screen so that I can enter the uh, add translations task. And then I can assign this to the correct team that I want to do the task. That's the workflow builder. The biggest use is of the application builder. The application builder is where I'm going to define what the application should look like and what the data in that application should look like. I can open it and open a model and see what the diagrams look like. For instance, this is B2B customer diagrams. This is interactive where I define my data. For instance, I'll add an entity and I'll call it address and I'll accept the defaults. And then maybe I want to add some attributes like street line 1, and I can change the data type or the settings and make it mandatory. And maybe I'll add another simple attribute called, let's say, city. If I wanted to relate the company to the address, I simply create a reference by dragging a line from one entity to the other and create that relationship. So now I can see there's an address on the company. All I have to do is publish this model now, and there'll be new screens to create addresses and relate them to companies. You can also do other customizations to what's automatically generated. This is a no-code environment, so there's no coding necessary. Everything's done through configuration. For instance, if I was to look at validation rules, I'd have a validation rule here that's going to flag something if it's missing the company name, as long as it's not from one of two countries. And here's a validation rule for that. It can't be from India or Vietnam. and I have access to all of the data and the related data to create my expressions. Same is true for enrichment. I can use Gen AI enrichers, or I can use third-party enrichers like address validations, or our built-in enrichers. Here's one that's going to create a phonetic name from the input name. That way I can compare during matching phonetic versions of the names. You can also create matchers with matchables. Here you can see I have some exact matches on tax ID, but I also have a phonetic match and a fuzzy match on address. Again, the application builder allows me to specify the conditions of what a fuzzy map is. So here you can see I'm using a distance algorithm and comparing the two names to decide if they should be the same or not. I can also change the way the screen looks through our use of form builders. Here's an example of what the approval form looks like. I can manage different sections and different columns, move different attributes into different tabs, and see a preview of the form as it's being built. This configuration tool will do everything I need to create the application that I demonstrated in the first screen. It's very intuitive and easy to use, and it's very agile. I can continue to make changes in this environment and then go back to the demo and see the changes reflected in the application. This is just a quick glimpse into what Semarchy's xDM application does. It's a native app in Snowflake available today so that you can create high quality data that's ready for AI and analytics. Thank you.